My name is Janelle Richardson. I'm 38 years old, and after my husband died 6 months ago, I got a new job working late shifts downtown. Every night, the same rideshare driver took me home. His name was Vincent, and I always tipped him well. But one night, everything changed. Vincent drove right past my street, and the words he said made my blood run cold. "Your neighbor has been watching you. Don't go home tonight. Tomorrow I'll show you the proof." I need to tell you this story because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And if sharing my nightmare saves even one person from going through what I went through, then reliving this horror will be worth it. But before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. You won't believe how this story unfolds, and I need to know that people are hearing this, that women out there understand the danger that can be lurking right across the street from them. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when my life fell apart. When David died, my husband, my best friend, my entire world collapsed. He was only 41, a heart attack that came out of nowhere on a Tuesday morning. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, walked out the door to go to work, and never came home. The doctors said it was massive, that he probably didn't suffer, that there was nothing anyone could have done. But those words meant nothing to me. Nothing could fill the void he left behind. We'd been married for 14 years. We had this beautiful life planned out. We were going to travel when we retired. We talked about maybe adopting a child. We had dreams, and in one morning, every single one of those dreams died with him. The financial reality hit me about 2 months after the funeral. David's life insurance helped, but it wasn't enough to cover the mortgage and living expenses indefinitely. I'd been working part-time as a medical billing specialist, but I needed more. I needed something that paid better, even if it meant sacrificing my comfort. That's how I ended up taking a position as a night shift supervisor at a distribution center downtown. The pay was good, better than anything else I could find with my qualifications, but the hours were brutal. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. I'd come home exhausted, sleep during the day in the house that felt too big and too empty without David, and do it all over again. I didn't have a car anymore. We'd only had one, and David's sister needed it more than I did after he died. She had 3 kids, and her car had finally given up. So I sold it to her for cheap, and I started using rideshare apps to get to and from work. That's how I met Vincent. The first night he picked me up, I was a mess. It was my 3rd day on the job, and I was so tired I could barely see straight. I got into his car, a clean, well-maintained Toyota Camry, and I just slumped in the back seat. He greeted me politely, confirmed my destination, and started driving. He didn't try to make small talk, didn't blast music, didn't do any of those things that some drivers do that make you want to scream when you're exhausted. He just drove, smoothly and carefully, and got me home safe. When we arrived at my house, that modest 2-bedroom I'd shared with David in our quiet suburban neighborhood, I tipped him extra, $20 on top of the fare. He seemed surprised, thanked me genuinely, and wished me a good night. The next night, I requested a ride after my shift, and it was Vincent again. Same professional courtesy, same smooth driving, same peaceful quiet that I desperately needed after 8 hours of managing a warehouse floor. I tipped him well again. By the end of that first week, it became our routine. Vincent would pick me up at 6:05 a.m. right when my shift ended. The ride took about 25 minutes depending on traffic. We'd talk sometimes, just light conversation. He told me he'd been driving for 3 years, that he liked the morning shift because the roads were clearer and people were generally nicer. He was in his mid-40s, had a kind face, and something about him reminded me of David, not physically, but in his manner, gentle, respectful, safe. I always tipped him generously, $15, $20 every single ride. It was worth it to have that consistency, to have someone I could trust to get me home safely when I was vulnerable and exhausted. Vincent never asked personal questions, but about 3 weeks into our routine, I mentioned that my husband had passed away. I don't know why I told him. Maybe because I was tired of pretending I was okay. Maybe because the grief was eating me alive and I needed someone, anyone, to acknowledge it. He told me he was sorry for my loss. He told me his wife had died 7 years ago from cancer, and that he understood that particular kind of loneliness. We didn't dwell on it. We didn't turn his car into a therapy session. But there was an understanding between us after that, a mutual respect born from shared pain. My neighborhood had always felt safe. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained houses, neighbors who waved hello and kept their lawns neat. David and I had moved there 8 years ago because it was quiet, affordable, and felt like the kind of place where you could build a life. After he died, that house became my prison and my sanctuary all at once. It was filled with memories that hurt to look at, but it was also the last place I'd been truly happy. I'd see my neighbors occasionally. Mrs. Chen, 2 doors down, would sometimes bring me casseroles, bless her heart. The Hendersons across the street had 3 young kids who played in their yard. And then there was him, the man who lived in the house directly across from mine. His name was Gerald Pittman. Mid-40s, average height, thinning hair, forgettable face. He lived alone in a house that was always a bit unkempt compared to the others on the street. Not terrible, just neglected. Overgrown bushes, paint that needed refreshing, that kind of thing. I'd interacted with him a handful of times over the years. He'd waved hello. Once, about 2 years ago, he offered to help David fix our fence after a storm damaged it. David politely declined. Another time, maybe 6 months before David died, Gerald asked if we needed help with yard work. Again, we said no thank you. After David's funeral, Gerald came over with a card and some flowers. He said he was sorry for my loss, that if I needed anything at all, I should let him know. He seemed sincere. I thanked him and closed the door. A few weeks later, he knocked again, asked if I needed help with anything around the house, told me he noticed some of my gutters looked clogged. I told him I was fine, that I had it handled. He smiled, said the offer stood any time, and left. I didn't think anything of it. He was just being a neighbor, maybe a bit overly friendly, but I chalked it up to him being one of those people who likes to feel helpful. Looking back now, knowing what I know, those interactions make my skin crawl. Every single one of them was him testing the waters, seeing how close he could get, establishing himself as the helpful neighbor, so I'd let my guard down. But I didn't know that then. Then, I was just a grieving widow trying to survive one day at a time. The routine continued. Work, Vincent, home, sleep, repeat. Weeks turned into months. I was functioning. Barely, but functioning. The job kept me busy enough that I couldn't drown in my grief completely. Vincent's reliable presence every morning gave me something stable to count on. And my home, despite being full of ghosts, was still my home. I never noticed anything wrong. That's what kills me now. For weeks, maybe months, I never noticed a single thing wrong. I didn't notice that sometimes things in my house were slightly out of place. A drawer I thought I'd closed that was open a crack. A picture frame angled slightly different. I blamed it on my exhaustion, my grief brain, my lack of attention to detail when I was barely holding myself together. I didn't notice that my neighbor Gerald seemed to always be outside when I came home in the mornings, always doing some yard work, or checking his mailbox, or taking out trash at 6:30 inches the morning. I thought he was just an early riser. I didn't notice that he'd wave a bit too enthusiastically, that he'd try to time his driveway activities to coincide with my arrival, that his eyes would follow me from my car to my front door. I didn't notice any of it, but Vincent did. It was a Thursday morning, about 6 weeks into our routine. Vincent picked me up from work like always. I was particularly exhausted that night because we'd had a massive shipment come in, and I'd spent 8 hours dealing with logistics nightmares. I got in his car, thanked him, and immediately closed my eyes, ready for the peaceful 25-minute ride home. We were about 10 minutes into the drive when Vincent spoke up. "Janelle, I need to talk to you about something." His tone was different. Serious. Concerned. I opened my eyes and looked at him in the rearview mirror. His jaw was tight, his expression troubled. "Okay," I said, suddenly alert. "What's wrong?" "Not here," he said quietly. "When we get closer to your place, I'll explain. But I need you to trust me, okay? I need you to trust that what I'm about to do is for your safety." My heart started pounding. "Vincent, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Just trust me," he repeated. "Please." The rest of that drive felt like hours, even though it was only 15 minutes. My mind raced through possibilities. Was something wrong with my house? Had something happened in the neighborhood? Was Vincent about to tell me something terrible? When we turned onto my street where I'd lived for 8 years, where I'd built a life with David, where I'd felt safe, Vincent didn't slow down. He drove right past my house without even tapping the brakes. "Vincent, what are you doing? That was my house." "I know," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Your neighbor has been watching you. Don't go home tonight. Tomorrow I'll show you the proof." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "What? What are you talking about?" "Which neighbor?" "The man across the street from you, Gerald." Vincent took a turn, heading away from my neighborhood. "I've been noticing things for the past 2 weeks, and what I saw tonight confirmed it. You're not safe there, Janelle. Not right now. Not until we get the police involved." "This is insane!" My voice was rising, panic flooding through me. "You're telling me my neighbor is watching me? How? Why? What proof?" "I'll show you everything tomorrow morning when it's light out. But right now, I'm taking you somewhere safe. And you're not going back to that house alone. Do you understand me?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand he turn around and take me home immediately. But something in his voice, something in the way he was gripping the steering wheel and checking his mirrors constantly, told me he was deadly serious. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "There's a 24-hour diner about 15 minutes from here. We're going to go there, I'm going to buy you breakfast, and I'm going to explain everything I've seen. Then we're going to figure out next steps together, okay?" "I should call the police right now," I said, reaching for my phone. "And tell them what?" Vincent asked gently. "That your rideshare driver says your neighbor is watching you? They'll tell you to file a report in the morning. They won't do anything tonight without evidence." "But I have evidence, Janelle. I have photos and videos, and tomorrow morning we're going to show them to the police together. But tonight, you need to stay somewhere safe." We pulled into the parking lot of a diner called Rosie's. It was one of those classic 24-hour places with red vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting. Vincent parked, turned around to face me, and I could see genuine fear in his eyes. "I know this sounds crazy," he said quietly. "I know you probably think I'm overreacting or that I'm some kind of creep myself. But I promise you, Janelle, I'm trying to protect you. Something is very wrong with your neighbor, and I've been documenting it because I needed to be sure before I scared you like this." My hands were shaking. Show me what you have right now." Vincent pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and handed it to me. "I'm going to go inside and get us a booth. You look through those photos. Take your time. When you're ready, come inside." He got out of the car and walked toward the diner, leaving me alone with his phone. I looked down at the screen. The photo app was already open. My finger trembled as I scrolled to the first image. It was taken from Vincent's car. I could tell from the angle. It showed my house, my street, early morning light. And there, in the window of Gerald's house, directly across from mine, was a figure. The next photo was zoomed in. Gerald, standing at his upstairs window, which had a direct sightline into my living room. He was holding something. The next photo zoomed in even more, and my stomach dropped. Binoculars. He was holding binoculars pointed directly at my house. I scrolled to the next photo. Date stamp showed it was from 5 days ago. Gerald, outside his house, doing something at my mailbox. The photo was a bit blurry, but clear enough to see him going through my mail. Next photo. 3 days ago. Gerald walking up to my front door while I was clearly not home. the house dark. He was looking around, checking to see if anyone was watching. Next photo. 2 days ago. Gerald in his yard, but his body was angled toward my house, and there was something in his hand. Vincent had zoomed in. It was a camera with a long lens. I felt bile rising in my throat. I kept scrolling. Photo after photo. Gerald watching my house from his window. Gerald in his yard with camera equipment. Gerald going through my trash bins. Gerald standing at the edge of his property line, staring at my bedroom window. And then, the video. Timestamp from earlier this morning. Just hours ago, Vincent had recorded from down the street. The video showed Gerald leaving his house, looking around carefully, then crossing the street to my house. My house. He walked up to my front door, and I watched in horror as he pulled out a key, my key, a key to my house, and unlocked my front door. He went inside. The video continued, showing him inside for approximately 4 minutes, then leaving, locking the door behind him, and going back to his house. He had a key to my house. He'd been inside my house. While I was at work, this man had been going into my home. I dropped the phone onto the seat and threw the car door open just in time to vomit into the parking lot. My entire body was shaking. Everything I thought I knew, every assumption I'd made about my safety, my home, my life, came crashing down around me. When I could finally stand, I grabbed Vincent's phone and stumbled into the diner. He was sitting in a corner booth, 2 cups of coffee already on the table. His face was full of concern and sadness, like he knew exactly what I'd just seen, what I was feeling. I slid into the booth across from him and pushed his phone back to him. He has a key to my house. Vincent nodded slowly. I know. I saw him use it twice, this morning and 3 days ago. How long? My voice broke. How long have you known? I first noticed him watching about 2 weeks ago, Vincent said carefully. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just an early riser who happened to be outside when we arrived. But something felt off, so I started paying closer attention. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wasn't angry, just desperate to understand. Because I needed to be sure, Vincent said. I needed evidence. If I'd told you 2 weeks ago that I had a weird feeling about your neighbor, what would you have done? He was right. I would have thought he was overreacting. I would have dismissed it. When I saw him going through your mailbox, I knew something was seriously wrong. So I started coming to your street during times when I knew you were at work, and I started documenting everything I saw. The cameras, the watching, the trash picking, and then 3 days ago, I saw him enter your house. I started recording immediately, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This morning, I saw him do it again. I need to call the police right now, I said, reaching for my phone. Yes, Vincent agreed. But there's something else I need to tell you first, and I need you to stay calm. How can I stay calm? This man has been in my house. He's been watching me. He has a key to my home. I know. But Janelle, I think it's worse than that. Vincent leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. This morning, when he went into your house, I watched which room his shadow moved to through the windows. He went upstairs, to your bedroom area, and he was up there for several minutes. My blood turned to ice. What are you saying? I think he might have put something in your house. Cameras, maybe. Recording devices. I don't know for sure, but the way he was moving, the amount of time he spent up there, it wasn't just him looking around. He was installing something or checking on something he'd already installed. The diner started spinning around me. My bedroom, my private space, the place where I slept, where I changed clothes, where I grieved for my husband in my most vulnerable moments. I'm going to be sick again, I managed to say. Vincent was already moving, grabbing napkins, steadying me. Breathe, just breathe. We're going to handle this. We're going to call the police, we're going to show them everything, and they're going to take care of this. But you cannot go back to that house alone. Do you understand me? You can't go back there until the police have checked it out. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, tears streaming down my face. That's my home. That's the house I shared with David. That's all I have left of my life with him. And this monster has been violating it. I know, Vincent said gently, and I'm so sorry. But right now, we need to focus on keeping you safe. Do you have family nearby? Friends you can stay with? I shook my head. David's family is all out of state. My parents died years ago. I have a few friends from work, but nobody I'm close enough with to just show up and ask to stay. Vincent was quiet for a moment, then said, There's a hotel about 2 miles from here. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. I'm going to pay for a room for you for tonight. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the police station first thing, and we're going to show them everything, okay? I can't let you pay for a hotel for me, I protested weakly. Yes, you can, and you will, Vincent said firmly. I have a daughter about your age. If this was happening to her, I'd want someone to help her. So please, let me help you. I was too exhausted, too shocked, too horrified to argue. I just nodded. Vincent drove me to the hotel. He came inside with me, paid for a room for 2 nights in cash, and walked me up to make sure it was secure. Before he left, he made me promise I wouldn't go home without him, that I'd call him first thing in the morning, and that if I needed anything during the day, I'd reach out. I promised. Then I locked myself in that hotel room and completely fell apart. I cried until I had no tears left. I paced the room like a caged animal. I kept looking at my phone, wanting to call the police immediately, but Vincent's words echoed in my mind. What would I tell them at midnight? That my rideshare driver said my neighbor was watching me? Would they even take it seriously? I pulled up Vincent's contact information and started researching him. I needed to know if I could trust him, if maybe this was all some elaborate scheme, if I was making a terrible mistake. I found his full name, Vincent Morrison. I found his rideshare driver profile with hundreds of 5-star reviews. I found his business license, his clean driving record, everything that confirmed he was exactly who he said he was. And then I thought about Gerald. I pulled up my own photos from over the years. There were a few where you could see him in the background at neighborhood gatherings, always at the edges, always watching. How had I never noticed? I researched him too. Gerald Pittman. Worked in IT for some company downtown. Divorced 8 years ago. No criminal record that I could find. Just a regular, average, forgettable man. That was what scared me most. He was so normal, so unremarkable. If Vincent hadn't been paying attention, if Vincent hadn't noticed and documented everything, I would have never known. Gerald would have continued having access to my house, watching me, doing God knows what, and I would have remained completely oblivious. I didn't sleep that night, not 1 minute. I sat in that hotel bed, fully dressed, lights on, jumping at every sound. My mind kept going back to my house, to my bedroom, to Vincent's warning that Gerald might have installed cameras. How long had those cameras been there? What had they recorded? Had this man watched me shower? Watched me change clothes? Watched me sleep? Watched me break down crying over my dead husband? The violation was so profound I couldn't even process it. My home, the one place that was supposed to be safe, had been compromised. My privacy, my dignity, my security, all of it had been stolen by someone I'd waved hello to, someone who'd brought me flowers after David's funeral. Morning came eventually. I watched the sun rise through the hotel window, and I'd never been more grateful to see daylight. At 7 a.m., I called Vincent. He answered on the first ring. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I didn't sleep. I need to go to the police now. Right now. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes, Vincent said. "We'll go together." True to his word, Vincent arrived 20 minutes later. We drove to the police station in silence. I couldn't find words for what I was feeling. Rage, terror, violation, betrayal, all of it swirling together into something I'd never experienced before. At the police station, we asked to speak with an officer about a stalking case. They took us to a small room, and a detective named Maria Santos came in. She was probably in her early 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Tell me what's going on," she said, pulling out a notepad. I tried to speak, but my voice caught. Vincent took over, explaining everything calmly and methodically. He showed Detective Santos his phone with all the photos and videos. He walked her through the timeline, when he first noticed Gerald's behavior, how it escalated, and finally the videos of Gerald entering my house with a key. Detective Santos's expression grew more serious with each piece of evidence. When she saw the video of Gerald using a key to enter my home, she immediately called another officer into the room. "Miss Richardson," she said, turning to me, "I need to be very clear with you. This is extremely serious. What we're seeing here is criminal stalking, voyeurism, breaking and entering, and potentially other charges depending on what we find. I need to ask you some questions, and then we're going to need to send officers to your home to investigate." "He might have put cameras in my house," I said, my voice shaking. "Vincent thinks he might have put cameras in my bedroom and bathroom." Detective Santos's jaw tightened. "We're going to find out, but I need you to understand that you cannot go back to that house until we've cleared it. This is now an active crime scene. Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" "She can stay at the hotel for as long as needed," Vincent said immediately. "I'll take care of it. Are you family?" Detective Santos asked. "No," Vincent said. "I'm her rideshare driver. I'm the one who noticed what was happening and documented it." Detective Santos looked between us, and something in her expression softened. "Mr. Morrison, you likely saved Miss Richardson from a very dangerous situation. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." She turned back to me. "Janelle, I'm going to be honest with you. Based on what we're seeing here, I believe your neighbor has been planning something. The level of surveillance, the key access to your home, the escalating behavior, these are all red flags that typically lead to a violent assault. We need to move quickly." Those words, violent assault, hit me like a physical blow. I started shaking so hard I couldn't control it. "We're going to get a warrant to search Gerald Pittman's residence," Detective Santos continued. "Based on this evidence, that won't be difficult. We're also going to send a team to your home to sweep for surveillance devices. In the meantime, I need you to write down everything you can remember about your interactions with Mr. Pittman. Every time he approached you, every conversation, anything that seemed odd at the time or makes sense now." The next few hours were a blur. I gave my statement. I wrote down everything I could remember. Vincent gave his statement and handed over his phone as evidence after making backup copies. Detective Santos told us they'd moved fast on the warrant and already had officers at Gerald's house. By early afternoon, Detective Santos called me back into her office. Her face was grave. "Janelle, we've completed our search of both residences. I need to prepare you for what I'm about to tell you." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. "We found extensive surveillance equipment at Gerald Pittman's residence. Multiple monitors, recording devices, hard drives. He had been surveilling you for approximately 4 months. We recovered footage dating back to mid-August, about 2 weeks after your husband's funeral. 4 months. He'd been watching me for 4 months. We also found surveillance cameras installed in your home," Detective Santos continued, and I watched her struggle with how to say what came next. 3 cameras total, 1 in your bedroom, 1 in your bathroom, and 1 in your living room. All of them were recording continuously and feeding to equipment in his home. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My bathroom, my bedroom. 4 months. "I'm so sorry," Detective Santos said quietly. "I know this is devastating news, but there's more you need to know. We found journals and documents that indicate Mr. Dodd Pittman had been planning to assault you. His writings suggest he was working up the courage to enter your home while you were there. Based on the escalation pattern, we believe he was very close to attempting this." "How close?" Vincent asked, his voice tight with anger. "Based on his journal entries, we believe it would have happened within the next week." I heard a sound come out of me that I didn't recognize. It was somewhere between a sob and a scream. Vincent's hand was on my shoulder. steady and grounding. Gerald Pittman has been arrested and is being held without bail, Detective Santos said. He's been charged with stalking, burglary, voyeurism, illegal surveillance, and we're pursuing additional charges based on what we found. This is a very strong case, Janelle. He's going to prison for a very long time. I need to know, I said, forcing the words out. I need to know what he recorded, what he saw. Detective Santos's expression was pained. Everything. He recorded everything. We have over 400 hours of footage from inside your home. Your bedroom, your bathroom, your living areas. All of it time-stamped and cataloged. It's evidence now, and it will be used to prosecute him. 400 hours. 400 hours of my most private moments. 400 hours of my grief, my vulnerability, my body, my life. All of it recorded and watched by a monster who lived across the street. Did he share it? I asked, terrified of the answer. Did he post it online or send it to anyone? We don't believe so, Detective Santos said. All the footage appears to have been for his personal use. We've seized all his computers and devices, and our tech team is examining everything. If we find any evidence that he distributed these recordings, we'll pursue additional charges. But as of right now, it appears he kept everything to himself. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Nothing about this was comforting. We've removed all the cameras from your home, Detective Santos continued. We've also had a locksmith change all your locks and install additional security measures. When you're ready to return, your home will be secure. But I want you to consider whether you want to return at all. I know it's your home, but given the trauma associated with it now, many victims in your situation choose to relocate. Relocate. Leave the house I'd shared with David, the house that held all our memories, all our dreams, everything we'd built together. Gerald had taken my husband from me through his death, and now he'd taken my home from me through his violation of it. I want to see him, I said suddenly. I want to see Gerald. That's not a good idea, Detective Santos said immediately. I don't care. I want to look him in the eye. I want him to see that I know, that I survived, that he didn't break me. Janelle, Vincent said gently, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I need to. Detective Santos considered this for a long moment. He's being processed for arraignment. You could attend the arraignment tomorrow if you want. You'd be able to see him there, and you'd be able to give a victim impact statement if the judge allows it. I'll be there, I said. That night, back at the hotel, I finally broke down completely. Vincent had gone home to rest, promising to pick me up in the morning for the arraignment. I was alone with the knowledge of what had been done to me. I thought about all those nights I'd come home from work, exhausted and vulnerable. All those mornings I'd showered and dressed, believing I was alone and safe. All those evenings I'd cried for David, broken and exposed in my grief. Gerald had watched it all. He'd recorded it all. He'd probably gotten some sick satisfaction from every moment of my pain. And he'd been planning to do worse. Detective Santos had made that clear. The journals they found painted a picture of a man who'd been building up to something terrible. He'd been watching me, learning my patterns, waiting for the right moment to strike. If Vincent hadn't noticed, if Vincent hadn't cared enough to pay attention and document everything, if Vincent hadn't driven past my house that morning and refused to let me go home, I would have walked into my house, oblivious and alone, and Gerald would have eventually made his move. He would have used his key to enter while I was sleeping. He would have assaulted me in my own bed, in the home I'd shared with my husband. Vincent had saved my life. This man I'd known for only 6 weeks, who had no obligation to do anything beyond drive me from point A to point B, had literally saved my life. The arraignment the next morning was surreal. The courtroom was small and cold. Vincent sat beside me in the gallery. Detective Santos was there too, along with the prosecutor handling the case. And then they brought Gerald in. He was in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. When his eyes found mine across the courtroom, I expected to see remorse or shame or fear, but there was nothing, just a blank, empty expression that made my skin crawl. The judge read the charges: stalking in the first degree, burglary, voyeurism, illegal surveillance. The list went on and on. Gerald's public defender entered a not guilty plea, which was expected. When the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement, I stood up. "Your Honor, my name is Janelle Richardson, and I'm the victim in this case. I'd like to say something." The judge nodded. "Go ahead, Miss Richardson." I turned to look directly at Gerald. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "You watched me grieve my husband. You recorded me in my most private moments. You violated my home, my safety, my dignity. You had a key to my house. You came into my bedroom, my bathroom, places where I should have been safe. You treated me like I was an object for your entertainment, like my pain and vulnerability were yours to consume." Gerald's expression didn't change. He just stared at me with those empty eyes. "But you didn't break me," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "You tried, but you failed, because someone noticed, someone cared enough to pay attention, to document what you were doing, to protect me, and now you're going to face the consequences of what you've done. You're going to prison, Gerald, and I'm going to heal. I'm going to survive. And you're going to be nothing but a cautionary tale I tell to help other women protect themselves." I sat back down, my entire body shaking. Vincent's hand found mine and squeezed gently. The judge set bail at $500,000, which Gerald couldn't make. He'd remain in custody until trial. As they led him away, he looked back at me one more time. And for just a second, I saw something in his expression. Not remorse, but anger. Anger that he'd been caught. Anger that his plans had been ruined. It made me sick, but it also made me realize how close I'd come to something terrible. The next few months were hell. The trial preparation, the therapy sessions, the process of deciding what to do about my house. Every day felt like climbing a mountain with weights tied to my ankles. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, was incredible. She built an airtight case against Gerald. The evidence was overwhelming. Vincent's photos and videos, the surveillance equipment, the recordings, the journals detailing his plans and fantasies. Gerald's defense attorney tried to argue that he was mentally ill, that he needed treatment rather than punishment. But the prosecution showed that Gerald had been methodical and calculating. He'd researched surveillance equipment. He'd practiced picking locks. He'd carefully timed his entries into my home for when he knew I wouldn't be there. This wasn't the behavior of someone who couldn't control themselves. This was predatory, planned, intentional. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I had to testify. I had to sit in that courtroom and listen to details of what Gerald had recorded, what he'd written about me in his journals, what he'd been planning to do. It was re-traumatizing in ways I can't even fully describe. But I did it. I testified. I looked at the jury and told them what this man had done to me, how he'd targeted me in my grief, how he'd violated every aspect of my privacy, how he'd made me afraid in my own home. Vincent testified too. He explained how he'd noticed Gerald's behavior, how he'd documented it, how he'd made the decision to intervene. The jury was visibly moved by his testimony. Here was a man who had no obligation to help me, who could have just driven me home and collected his fare, but who chose to protect a stranger instead. The defense tried to discredit Vincent, suggesting his actions were suspicious, that maybe he had ulterior motives, but it didn't work. Vincent's character was unimpeachable, and his evidence was rock solid. When they played portions of the surveillance footage in court, after editing it to remove the most graphic invasions of my privacy, I had to leave the courtroom. I couldn't watch myself on those screens, couldn't see myself from Gerald's perspective, couldn't relive those moments of vulnerability that he'd stolen from me. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all charges. At the sentencing hearing, I gave my victim impact statement. I'd prepared it with my therapist, worked on it for weeks, trying to find words adequate to express what Gerald had done to me. Your Honor, I began, my voice shaking but clear. Gerald Pittman didn't just invade my home. He invaded my grief. He targeted me specifically because I was vulnerable, because I'd just lost my husband, because I was alone. He watched me in my most private moments. He recorded me in ways that violated every aspect of my dignity. He planned to assault me, to hurt me, to take even more from me than he'd already taken. I paused, looking at Gerald, who sat emotionless at the defense table. I will carry the trauma of what he did for the rest of my life. I will never feel completely safe again. I had to sell my home, the house I'd shared with my husband, because he tainted every room with his presence. I have nightmares. I have panic attacks. I check every room for cameras. I assume everyone is watching me. That's what he did to me. I turned back to the judge. But I'm still here. I'm still standing, and I'm asking you to give him the maximum sentence allowed by law, not just for what he did to me, but to prevent him from ever doing this to anyone else. Because if he's caught me, if he targeted me, he will target someone else if given the chance. He is a predator, Your Honor, and predators don't change. The judge sentenced Gerald Pittman to 15 years in prison, no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. Upon release, he'd be required to register as a sex offender, comply with GPS monitoring, and have no contact with me for the rest of his life. 15 years. It felt like both too much and not enough. Too much in that it was a significant portion of a human life, not enough in that no amount of time could undo what he'd done to me. But it was over. Finally, it was over. 6 months after the trial, I was finally starting to feel like I could breathe again. I'd sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't walk into that bedroom or that bathroom without seeing those cameras, without feeling Gerald's eyes on me. A young couple with a baby bought it, and I hoped they'd fill it with happier memories than the ones I was leaving behind. I moved into a small apartment across town. Ground floor, security system, cameras I installed myself, so I knew exactly where they were, and that they only recorded the outside. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was safe. I'd kept my job at the distribution center. The routine helped, and my coworkers had been incredibly supportive. They'd raised money to help with my moving costs, which made me cry when they presented it to me. And Vincent. Vincent had become one of the most important people in my life. We developed a real friendship through this nightmare. He still drove me to and from work most days, though I'd started using other drivers occasionally too, working on not being dependent on any one person for my safety. Vincent had become like a protective older brother. We'd have coffee sometimes on his days off. He'd check in on me regularly, making sure I was okay, that I was going to therapy, that I wasn't isolating myself. His daughter and I had even met for lunch a few times. She was a lovely person, and I understood why Vincent was so proud of her. I'd also started doing advocacy work. The detective who handled my case, Maria Santos, connected me with an organization that helped stalking victims. I started speaking at community centers and women's groups about the warning signs of stalking, about home security, about trusting your instincts. I shared my story, painful as it was, because I wanted other women to know they weren't alone. I wanted them to understand that predators like Gerald exist, that they're often people you know, people who seem normal, people who live right across the street. Most importantly, I talked about the importance of having people like Vincent in your life, people who pay attention, people who care enough to get involved, people who will protect you even when they have no obligation to do so. I also started a small initiative to help women check their homes for hidden cameras. I'd learned so much about surveillance technology through my case, and I wanted to share that knowledge. I'd do free home security checks for women who were concerned, teaching them what to look for, how to detect hidden cameras, how to secure their spaces. It was healing, in a way, taking my trauma and turning it into something that could help others. It didn't erase what had happened to me, but it gave it purpose. Therapy was helping too. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Moore, was patient and kind. She helped me work through the layers of trauma, not just from Gerald's violations, but from David's death too. I'd never properly processed losing my husband. I'd just been surviving day to day. And then Gerald had exploited that vulnerability. Dr. Moore helped me see that what happened wasn't my fault, that being a grieving widow didn't make me responsible for a predator's actions, that I hadn't missed warning signs, that Gerald had been deliberately deceptive, that I was allowed to trust people, to live in my home without checking every corner, to exist in the world without constant vigilance. It was slow work. Some days were better than others. I still had nightmares. I still had moments where I'd see someone who looked like Gerald and my heart would race. I still couldn't watch certain TV shows or movies that depicted surveillance or stalking. But I was healing. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely healing. 1 year after Vincent drove past my house and changed my life, we met for coffee at that same diner where he'd first shown me the evidence. Rosie's had become our place, in a way. A spot where we'd meet up, catch up, just be friends. "How are you really doing?" Vincent asked me, studying my face in that concerned way he had. "Better," I said honestly. "Not great, not fully healed, but better. I'm sleeping more. The nightmares are less frequent. I can take a shower without having a panic attack most days now." "That's progress," Vincent said gently. "It is." I agreed. "And I owe so much of it to you. If you hadn't noticed, if you hadn't cared, if you hadn't documented everything and refused to let me go home that night." "Don't," Vincent said, shaking his head. "Don't go down that road. We can't think about what might have happened. We can only deal with what did happen and what's happening now." "What did happen is that you saved my life," I said firmly. "The police confirmed it. Gerald's journals, his plans. He was going to assault me within days of when you intervened. So yes, Vincent, you saved my life, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." Vincent's eyes were wet. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," I said, "you didn't. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Most people wouldn't have taken the time to document it. Most people wouldn't have gotten involved. You're not anyone, Vincent. You're someone special. Someone who gives a damn about strangers. Someone who sees women as human beings worth protecting." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us emotional. "You know what I've learned through all of this?" I said finally. "That there are monsters in the world. People like Gerald who prey on vulnerable women, who violate and harm and destroy. But there are also angels, people like you who protect and help and care. And maybe that's the balance. Maybe the angels exist to fight the monsters." "I'm no angel," Vincent said with a slight smile. "You are to me," I said simply. "Today, as I'm recording this story, it's been 14 months since everything happened. Gerald is in prison. He'll be there for a long time. I've built a new life in my small apartment. I still work at the distribution center. I still do my advocacy work. I still go to therapy every week, and I'm okay. Not perfect, not completely healed, but okay. I want everyone watching this to understand something crucial. Stalkers exist. Predators exist. They're often not strangers hiding in bushes. They're neighbors, coworkers, acquaintances. They're people who seem normal, who blend in, who you'd never suspect. The warning signs are there, but they're subtle. Someone who's always around. Someone who seems overly interested in your schedule. Someone who offers help that feels slightly invasive. Someone whose friendliness crosses into something that makes you uncomfortable, but you can't quite name why. Trust those instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And please, I'm begging you, check your homes for hidden cameras. There are apps you can download that detect camera lenses. There are professionals who can sweep your home. If someone has had access to your space and you have any reason to be suspicious, check. It could save you from the violation I experienced. Look for small holes in walls or ceilings. Check smoke detectors and electrical outlets. Look for tiny lenses in everyday objects. Be aware of devices that shouldn't be there or that seem out of place. Never give anyone unsupervised access to your home. Not neighbors, not repair people, not anyone, unless you absolutely trust them. And even then, be cautious. Install security systems. Get cameras for the outside of your home. Change your locks regularly. Be aware of your surroundings. But most importantly, cultivate relationships with people who pay attention. People like Vincent who notice when something's wrong. People who will speak up even when it's uncomfortable. People who will protect you when you can't protect yourself. And if you're someone like Vincent, if you notice something that doesn't feel right, speak up, get involved, document what you see. You might save someone's life. You might be the difference between a woman going home to danger or going somewhere safe. The world has monsters in it. That's a fact I can't change. But the world also has protectors. It has people who care. It has people who will fight for strangers. And that's what gives me hope. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, please reach out for help. Tell someone. File a police report. Don't wait for it to get worse. Don't assume you're overreacting. Your instincts are valid. Your fear is real, and you deserve to be safe. If this story resonated with you or scared you in any way, please share it. It could save someone. Like and subscribe for more true stories and safety awareness content. Comment below if you've ever had someone look out for you the way Vincent looked out for me, or if you've experienced something similar. Stay safe out there. Check your homes. Trust your instincts. And never underestimate the danger that might be living right across the street. My name is Janelle Richardson. I'm 38 years old. I'm a stalking survivor. And I'm here to tell you that healing is possible, that justice exists, and that there are good people in this world who will protect you when you need it most. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for caring. And please, please stay vigilant. Your life might depend on it.